Please come in. You're right on time. The door only opens when the clock strikes midnight. Georgia and Hannah are preparing to broadcast from the belfry. Just like this old bell tower, they have many stories to tell. Some old and some new. Follow me up these stairs, but mind your step. Ah, they're waiting for you.
I almost ended the meeting forever.
Almost ended it forever. Goodbye.
Blow my brains out right here.
Listen, Aaron Hansen has said many a time that if he is going to die, it's going to be on YouTube and it's going to be monetized. So at least it'll be worth it. What a guy.
So about Supermarket
Simulator.
Oh my god.
I should totally get that game and then we could play it. Oh, did I tell you this morning after you texted me and I was laying in bed, I was looking at mini PCs. I think that might be a good idea for me.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, so you know how like there's the all-in-one like what we have, and we've talked about getting one of those like for our own home, like individually, obviously not getting one and then sharing it
for our own home that we also
for
share.
our own home, we share a home. Sister wives. Oh no, wait, that's a different thing.
Yeah, that's like Mormons.
Yeah, that's sorry. I've always got the definition of sister wives confused. Anyway,
our boyfriends are married to each other. I don't know what that makes us, but in-laws of some kind. Maybe.
Yeah.
In-laws.
In-laws. But so there's those, then there's like the desktop computer that's like the box.
Yeah.
Which admittedly, my family never put it on the table. It was always on the ground.
This one's down here on the ground, yeah.
And then some people like have it as like their monitor stand.
That's how mine at work is, yeah.
Yeah. Well, a mini PC is just like a little box that is the computer, and everything you need is right there. So it basically runs exactly like a laptop does. It's just it's portable since it's so small, and it has all of the connective capabilities to like plug into more than one monitor, and there's like USB plugins and whatever. I was like, damn, that's a really good idea, because I don't know how mobile I'm going to be in the future. The most expensive mini PC is like, well, it's still pretty expensive. It's like $650, and the least expensive one
$650
is $650, and the least expensive one is less than $100. And
oh Jesus,
I know there's
I'm
one
sure
I
it's
found,
mostly like storage space.
Maybe there's one I found that's $156. You can, or that's for 8 gigabytes of RAM, and it comes with, I believe, you can get them with 1 terabyte of storage space, but you can also get a 16 gigabyte RAM version that's a little bit like, I think $35 more that has the same amount of space, and it's like,
yeah. And if you're gonna use an external anyway for all your shit, like
I would just use that for like, video and audio editing, maybe some cozy games, whatever. I don't need that much. Like my laptop runs it just fine. It's just an old laptop. So like if I had a mini PC, which is admittedly cheaper than a new laptop, it can run better than a laptop, albeit slightly, like that might be the move. I don't want to have to lug around a computer, no matter how nice it would be. I just wanted to share that.
Oh yeah. I am just really glad Shannon moved in because I like having a desktop here. And now I feel less inclined to need to buy one. Although technically this is Andrew's computer. But he like
now Shannon's.
He sent it to Shannon so that they could play games together.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, Andrew's an IT guy, so
yeah.
Yeah. My soul got like all the stuff that Andrew like set it up on. Like he made a joke screensaver, put a dumb picture of his face over Arnold Schwarzenegger as Conan the Barbarian, and like and Shannon never changed it, so like that's the background on this computer.
Probably because he loves it. That sounds funny, bro.
He does. Andrew loves Conan, and Shannon loves Andrew.
Facts.
So there it is.
All right.
Anyway.
So for these notes, Georgia passed on her notes that she had previously written, as well as Brandon's notes. And I kind of, I rewrote several sections so it sounded more like I'm reading it because I am Hannah. And I left some things in and I added a bit more information on others. I also added
you're like smushing two topics together, so
yeah. Well, I kind of go one and then the other. I added author names, which you had not included, which is funny because
I wrote them a really long time ago.
I know. I was gonna say like you probably left it out because it's a lot of information.
Yeah. I think I was just also trying to avoid like too many names to make things convoluted as well.
Yeah.
But we're academic now.
That. I put in every goddamn name that I could find. Thank you, Encyclopedia Britannica. So if anyone lives under a rock, much like how Patrick lives, also in SpongeBob, the Flying Dutchman is a European maritime legend of a phantom ship with a cursed crew, doomed to never make port and sail the seas for all eternity. That was George's joke. Thank you, everyone.
I completely forgot I wrote that, so you're welcome.
Some described it as glowing with some ghostly light, and it was known to be the worst possible omen that you could experience at sea. Some versions of the legend said that if letters or messages were given by the Flying Dutchman addressed to their long-dead families, accepting them would bring misfortune. It is usually depicted as a 17th century cargo vessel known as a vloot, a Dutch sailing vessel that was designed specifically to transport cargo and without the intention to be converted to a warship during wartime. So it had more room to carry stuff rather than cannons and other weaponry, and it could be ran using a much, much smaller crew.
Cool.
There's some uncertainty as to whether the name referred to the ship or the captain, but most people use the name to refer to the ship, given that ships had fun names in the 17th and 18th centuries. The Flying Dutchman first appeared in print in 1790 in John Macdonald's accounts of his travels in various parts of Europe, Asia, and Africa during a series of 30 years and upwards. The excerpt in which the ship is mentioned is as follows. The weather was so stormy that the sailors said they saw the Flying Dutchman. The common story is that this Dutchman came to the Cape in distress of weather and wanted to get into harbor, but could not get a pilot to conduct her and was lost. And that ever since, in very bad weather, her vision appeared. Ooh, pretty short excerpt, but it was then mentioned just 5 years later in another written account of someone's traveling, this time by George Barrington. So 5 years later, 1795, he told pretty much the same story, but added that it was most often heard from sailors who were prone to superstition, like seeing this ghostly ship. And this reads, in the night watch, some of the people saw, or imagined they saw, a vessel standing for them under a press of sail as though she would run them down. One in particular affirmed it was the ship that had foundered in the former gale, and that it must certainly be her, or the apparition of her. But on its clearing up, the object, a dark, thick cloud, disappeared.
Ooh.
Thank you for I knew you were gonna do some like sound effects. Nothing could do away the idea of this phenomenon on the minds of the sailors, and on their relating the circumstances when they arrived in port, the story spread like wildfire, and the supposed phantom was called the Flying Dutchman. And then 8 years later, a third appearance in print with John Leyden's Scenes of Infancy in 1803. Mentions the Flying Dutchman, but introduces the motif of punishment for a crime. Ooh. It reads, "It is a common superstition of mariners that in the high southern latitudes on the coast of Africa, hurricanes are frequently ushered in by the appearance of a specter ship denominated the Flying Dutchman. The crew of this vessel are supposed to have been guilty of some dreadful crime. Ugh, I can't fucking talk. In the infancy of navigation, and to have been stricken with pestilence, and are ordained still to traverse the ocean on which they perished till the period of their penance expire." And these people write really well.
Punish me, Daddy Dutchman.
Daddy Dutchman, though.
Anyway.
So there are two main origin stories that date to the 17th century. So after the fact, people started trying to figure out where the hell this came from. They each center around the Cape of Good Hope, which is at the tip of Africa on the west side in Cape Town. Is the city there. And it's this little hook kind of peninsula. I will probably add a picture to whatever post goes up with this. It also apparently used to be known as the Cape of the Storms, or Cape of Storms, which is more accurate than Cape of Good Hope, considering the type of weather commonly experienced there. I know, Cape of Storms. It had some sort of Dutch name, but it's translated to Cape of Storms. I just can't speak Dutch, so this was a very common route going along the coast. They're right past the Cape, going from Europe to Africa, because at the time you had to go all the ass way around to get to India.
All the ass way around.
Yeah, all the ass way around, because at the time there was no Suez Canal. None of that. The most popular origin story is of a 17th century Dutch captain, Bernard Fokke. The first printed version of the legend based on him was printed in Blackwood's Edinburgh magazine in 1821. So I'm going to talk about this legend first, and then I'll talk about Captain Fokke.
The guy.
The captain in this story has a much more fun name, even though Fokke is funny. Captain Hendrik van der Decken.
Oh yeah, van der Decken. I remember that.
And you had written, some say he was mad, some say it was the hooch, some say it was pride, and even others say it was the satanic activities he practiced aboard his ship.
Hell yeah.
Which is just, it's kind of like a little description
hooch
of this man. The hooch. You wrote the hooch, bro. I left it in.
The hooch.
So here is a little excerpt. I think this might have been the summary. You know how you have like the introduction or whatever's written on the back of the book or in the dust cover.
Yeah.
She was an Amsterdam vessel and sailed from port 70 years ago. Her master's name was Van der Decken. He was a staunch seaman and would have his own way in spite of the devil. For all that, never a sailor under him had reason to complain. Though how it is on board with them, nobody knows. The story is this, that in doubling the Cape, they were a long day trying to weather the Table Bay. However, the wind headed them and went against them more and more, and Van der Decken walked the deck, swearing at the wind. Just after sunset, a vessel spoke to him, asking him if he did not mean to go into the bay that night. Van der Decken replied, "May I be eternally damned if I do, though I should beat about here till the day of judgment. I can't talk." And to be sure, he never did go into that bay, for it is believed that he continues to beat about in these seas still, and will do so long enough. This vessel is never seen, but with foul weather along her.
Uh-huh.
So the gist of the story is that the ship was returning to Amsterdam when the captain decided that they would make port on the Cape before they got hit with bad weather, but the storm hit earlier than anticipated as they rounded the Cape. His sailors argued that they should turn around because they were in danger of capsizing, but he ordered them to continue forward, even if it meant that he sailed until doomsday. So he wanted to just keep on keeping on.
Same.
And ended up dead.
An object in motion stays in motion.
You can say
I'll
that
wind
again.
up dead too.
One variation of this is that the group of particularly argumentative sailors,
Same thing.
had a leader who the captain killed and threw his body overboard. As the body hit the water, the ship itself spoke to the captain about his decision to continue on, and he replied that he will be attempting to reach his destination until Judgment Day. But regardless, it is said that the devil heard his oath and stuck it to him, condemning the ship and its crew to sail for eternity, unable to pass any harbor, always moving. Their salvation could only come if the captain could find his one true love who swore fidelity to him, the catch being that he can only make port once every 7 years to find his love.
Very Pirates of the Caribbean.
I was just about to say, sound familiar? This is the version of the legend that Wagner's opera.
Yeah.
Der Fliegende Holländer, the Flying Dutchman.
Hell yeah.
Is based on. So this real guy named Captain Bernard Fokke that I mentioned. Captain Fokke sailed for the Dutch East India Company in the 1600s. That was the golden age of Dutch maritime power, and creating the Dutch East India Company was a pretty big deal for trade at the time. And while Captain Fokke was in on this trade deal, he was a part of making this happen. I think it was because he had a reputation for being a really fast sailor, like moving his ship really fast, and knew that he would be able to make a lot of money as a merchant along this route. It took him only 3 months to get from Amsterdam to Indonesia. Only 3.
That's crazy.
It normally took like 8 to 10.
Yeah.
That's insane.
And also,
how
it's like,
do you cut off 5 months of that time? It's nuts.
Also, it's like prime pirate times. Like we have like East India Trading Company. We have, like exploitation of all of Asia and Africa. Which is probably why he's like, I can make so much money doing this.
Yeah. I can't remember which direction is faster, like getting there, because the way that the
currents
and everything, but maybe he figured out a method to use the currents to his advantage to make him go faster.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like without using the technology that we have now.
I would assume going,
because isn't it usually like right to left? So going back to Amsterdam might be easier.
I would assume, well, I know when I fly back to England, it's faster to go there than it is to come back. So, and it's because of the wind.
So maybe.
So I would assume going
like Indonesia down to Africa is quick, but then heading all the way back up north might be. I don't know. I'm going to write this down so I can look into it because now I'm curious. Which is faster? Okay. So he was fast enough that people started believing that he traded his soul to achieve this speed during a game of dice with the devil, and that even now he continues to play for his soul whilst sailing forever.
Yeah.
Game of dice. Mean, sure.
That's a very common method of losing your soul in stories, I think, from this time.
Yeah, playing games dice with the devil, fiddle, whatever, guitar.
And I think dice were just a common game on ships, right? So, because they don't take up that much space, and you could probably make them out of anything. Making
any sort of deal with the devil or like a bet is probably just a bad idea.
Yeah, well, if we do a Halloween special, we can talk all about that.
Hell yeah. So this version of the story with Captain Fuka inspired The Rime of the Ancient Mariner by
I
Samuel Taylor Coleridge.
love The Rime of the Ancient Mariner.
I read it for the very first time a few days ago.
Yeah.
What's today? Sunday. I read it on Thursday. I like it.
I reread it like since Shannon has moved in, so it's not been that long. I just was thinking a lot about it for some reason, and I think my brain was like, this would make a really cool foundation for a Call of Cthulhu scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started going back through it with like that kind of lens of like, how could I turn this into a game, a scenario for Call of Cthulhu? So
there are a lot of like ghost ship stories that could so easily be turned into scenarios just with a little tweaking.
Yeah.
I just under that I have written that Sir Walter Scott also wrote his own story, who wrote The Huntsman.
The Huntsman, yeah. Which was the foundation for Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
Mm-hmm. Which we talked about so long ago, like the inaugural episode. And now we have 2 episodes left. Oh,
for this season. We'll be back next season. Don't worry.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Sir Walter Scott. Sir Walter Scott wrote that the Flying Dutchman was originally a vessel loaded by great wealth on board, which some horrid act of murder and piracy had been committed. So that's another origin created about the Flying Dutchman. Mm-hmm. You know, people just be making up shit because it sounds like fun.
Mm-hmm. Same.
So I'd like to talk about a few sightings.
Okay.
In the 1600s, there was a sighting off the Cape during stormy weather, and it looked like the ship was caught in the storm about to crash into the rocks. And it was headed for the rocks when it disappeared into the dark land, like into the cliff. Isn't that crazy?
Very Scooby-Doo.
Yes. In 1835, a British vessel almost collided with the ghost ship on a stormy night. It was described as being under full sail, and then it suddenly vanished right in front of them. One of the most famous reports is from 1881. This was also in your notes, when the Flying Dutchman was sighted by a British Royal Naval vessel with Prince George of Wales, later King George V, and his older brother, Prince Albert Victor of Wales, on board. One of the princes, and it's unclear which one, wrote about the sighting. July 11th. At 4 a.m., the Flying Dutchman crossed our bows. A strange red light, as of a phantom ship, all aglow, in the midst of which light the masts, spars, and sails of a brig 200 yards distant stood out in strong relief as she came up on the port bow, when also the officer of the watch from the bridge clearly forward at once to the forecastle. But on arriving, there was no vestige nor any sign whatever of any material ship was to be seen either near or right away to the horizon, the night being clear and calm. 13 persons altogether saw her. This was at 4 a.m. And then at 10:45 a.m., the ordinary seamen who had the morning reported the Flying Dutchman fell from the fore topmast cross trees onto the top gallant forecastle and was smashed to atoms. There's a lot of ship words in there that I really am just not going to parse here, but basically the
guy
people
fell
down. The guy who first spotted the Dutchman fell from really high up later in the morning. And he fucking died.
Splat.
He went big splat. Smashed to atoms. Damn.
Gross.
In 1939, people on a beach at Cape Town reported seeing the ship sailing towards the shore at full sail, then disappearing. Now remember, this is World War II, 1939. Mm-hmm. And then in 1942, during World War II, a German submarine sighted the Flying Dutchman during a voyage east of Suez.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the last time it was ever officially reported seen.
That's so weird that it just stopped.
I know. I seriously spent like 20, 25 minutes doing various Googles trying to find anything of like official reports of stuff.
It's really interesting.
I know. Even like rumors or like, pictures of ghostly ships. Like I saw one and it was very clearly um like a big metal vessel kind of thing. I was like,
yeah,
are y'all serious? It's like on one of those conspiracy websites. I'm like, this is really all we have? Seriously?
lame.
I don't know if it's just harder because we have really great cameras now. So like when people try and capture a picture and get nothing, they're like, well, what am I gonna do?
Yeah.
I don't know. You and me could just make some shit up and say we saw it one day. Who's gonna know?
I mean, I feel like a lot of people with any kind of ghost sightings, a lot of people do that. Well, I saw this, but and I took a picture of it, but I accidentally deleted it, or
Like I took a picture and you can clearly see there's a light. That means it's a ghost.
yeah.
It's like, all right, you may have seen a figure in person, but you didn't capture evidence of it, so I'm sorry.
Yeah. Boo.
Boo. You and me are gonna travel to Cape Town.
We're gonna go ghost hunting
And
all
we're gonna
over.
freaking find the ship.
We're gonna go to Mothman Festival.
Hell yeah.
I didn't know this until this morning, so
But if it's at the same time as the IAS,
it's gonna be an ISAS fest anyway, so who cares?
you're right.
The agenda's already out, and it's all ISAS is doing this, ISAS is doing that. We already fucking know what ISAS is doing, so who cares?
So going back to the age of piracy.
Uh-huh. Yeehaw! To quote Shannon's dad.
Yeehaw! The concept of the Flying Dutchman became a very real issue for those participating in trade along the Dutch East India Company route. Because pirates would take advantage of this superstition. They would dress their ship up to look like a ghost ship in order to get close enough to their target. And by the time the victims realized it really wasn't really a ghost ship, it was too late to do anything about it. They're like, okay, well, oops. The most credible explanation for seeing this phenomenon is through what's called fata morgana, a fancy term for a complex mirage that appears when light refracts and bends through different temperatures of light, as to how the road shimmers on hot days. The name comes from the Italian translation of Morgan Le Fay of Arthurian legend. The mirages are often seen in the Italian Strait of Messina and were described as fairy castles in the air or false land conjured by her magic out there in the ocean.
Can we just pause to remember that the Strait of Messina is where Scylla and Charybdis are also said to live?
Isn't that crazy?
It's so fun!
God, this is so fun. So it can seem that ships are beyond the horizon because of the way that light bends around the curvature of the Earth. It can also produce a reflection of your own ship in the distance that might look like it's floating above the horizon. I have even seen this happen being out on the water and like looking at ships out in the distance. You could even see this kind of thing on like Lake Erie,
Yeah,
it's not
literally
hard.
Actually, I think I might have a picture. I'll have to look, but when I was in Wales last month, like we were looking out and it was kind of a foggy day, so I think that was part of it as well, but you could not see where like the horizon ended and the water was, so there was this huge like cargo ship that did just look like it was floating.
That's awesome.
So I'll have to see if I can find it and if it like is a good example because it was crazy.
You might be thinking that none of those origin stories were about Davy Jones.
This sounds like something I wrote.
That's because Disney made that shit up. Kind of. Yes, that's a verbatim Georgia note. So David Jones was a real guy. He was a pirate, but he wasn't popular enough to become so legendary as Davy Jones. There are variations on the origins of Davy Jones and his locker. Davy Jones's locker being an idiom for the sea floor, where all people and things lost at sea will end up, as well as a way for sailors to refer to the afterlife, who's sort of their philosophy, I guess. But the very first reference of Davy Jones goes back to the 18th century when the locker was popularized as a nautical superstition. What?
Talk about weird. My mom's friend, the one that I stayed with in Liverpool,
Yeah.
she just tagged me in a post on Facebook about Fata Morgana.
No way.
Like,
what? Hold on.
the timing of this.
Yeah, look at that.
Isn't that what? Talk about timing.
That's exactly what it is. Look at that. Oh, what a time to be alive. So Davy Jones was referred to as the sailor's devil or as some kind of evil sea god. There's also the I did not read this part. There's also the legend of Davy Jones, the pub owner who got patrons drunk and imprisoned them in his locker, maybe a meat lock or something like that, or maybe he had a little cell, whatever. Then he would sell these people to ship owners as slaves. The pub then goes bankrupt, so Davy Jones steals a ship and sails the Atlantic, capturing other ships, decapitating most of the people on board, but some he would just lock up and then sink the ship so they drown. Daniel Defoe, Washington Irving, Edgar Allan Poe, Herman Melville, Charles Dickens, and Robert Louis Stevenson all mention Davy Jones.
Oh, yeah.
So now I'm going to talk about the uncanny incident aboard the SS Ourang Medan, or Man of Medan, if you prefer the translation from Malay. So this information Brandon wrote.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just gonna.
There's probably a lot of bad jokes in it.
Maybe. I legitimately didn't read this. It looked thick enough that I was like, yeah, this seems like it's good.
Fine. So trusting of you.
I know. Don't worry. I'll be careful. So at the top of it, it says disclaimer. As with many stories of a similar nature, there are many small inconsistencies between accounts of this allegedly historical event. So this is his own writing, compiling all of this.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to read it as if I was reading a story.
Yeah, he wrote like a whole narrative, so.
Yeah. Picture the sea. Waves rolling, gulls cawing, and the sea spray on the whipping wind in the Malacca Strait. The year is 1947-ish. We'll deal with that later. 2 American vessels, the City of Baltimore, awful name for a ship, and Silver Star, better, are traveling near the relatively narrow waterway between the Indonesian island of Sumatra and Malaysia when they receive multiple distressed Morse communications. The first of the messages to reach the local vessels was as follows. SOS from Ourang Medan. ... We float. All officers, including the captain, dead in chart room and on the bridge. ... Probably whole of crew dead. ... After a time, the final message sent from the Ourang Medan came after a jumble of undecipherable dots and dashes and was simply, I die. After using radio directional equipment to gain a heading towards them, the Silver Star, being the closer of the 2 ships, altered course and traveled 19 hours to render aid to the distressed vessel while the City of Baltimore kept radio contact with the Star for support. Okay. The 5,000 people Dutch steamship was finally found adrift some 50 miles from its originally indicated position. The rescue crew noted that on their approach, there were no visible members of the Ourang Medan within view, nor was there damage of any kind to the vessel herself. She presented with a slight starboard list, leaning modestly to her right side, and her chimneys were not putting out steam. All attempts of radio contact and horn blasts went unanswered. A skiff was launched holding 10 men to inspect the ship. Upon boarding to assist the Medan's crew, the sailors found the innards of the ship to be frigid despite the sweltering 110-degree heat outside, Fahrenheit,
Gross.
by the way, and a strange smell hung in the air. In the chill of the darkened corridors, corpses were found, each laying at or near their respective posts. Captain on the bridge, officers in the wheelhouse and chart room, etc. Each of the bodies was found laid out, rigid, open mouth, wide-eyed terror fixed on their faces. Even a dog kept by the steamship's crew was found dead with a permanent snarl. It was suggested by those who saw the deceased that signs of decomposition were already becoming apparent apparent, despite having just recently perished. So that was, you remember, it was like 19 hours that it took them to reach the ship.
Yeah. And you'd think if it were cold on board, that would also hinder decomp as well.
If it was freezing when it was 110 outside, good lord. During the search for survivors, it was discovered that a lifeboat was missing from the starboard deck, but there is no record of crew members being recovered. 22 souls were lost. Okay, then I don't know what this 5,000... Oh, it just says the 5,000 Dutch steamship. I thought that meant people, but I don't... It's probably some ship lingo that I don't know.
Like feet
5,000...
or like a unit of length.
I don't know. 22 souls were lost, 23, including the dog. There were no visible signs of injuries to the unfortunate crew, no traces of blood or apparent evidence as to what transpired on board. Baffled, the Silver Star away team readied rigging lines to tow the Medan to a nearby port for further investigation. Amid preparations, thick smoke began to pour out from the Medan's number 4 cargo hold, and furious flames spread. The fire became too large, so saving the vessel was out of the question. The rescue team cut the tow lines and abandoned the ship with just enough time to get clear with their skiff before she violently exploded. Flames engulfed the ship while the sailors of the Silver Star watched it roll onto its side, take on water, and sink beneath the surf, taking all evidence of the encounter with her. She would come to rest roughly 3.1 miles deep. It was assumed that the ship's cargo was volatile in nature and the result of the accident. Weeks after the strange encounter at sea, a lifeboat washes ashore on Taongi Island, which would indicate that it drifted some 4,800 miles before being discovered. 7 men were found in the boat, of which only 1 clung to life. His 6 travel companions succumbed to the heat and exposure, but with his remaining strength, he conveyed any relevant details about his experience to a missionary who tended to him. He told them he was Jerry Rabbit, which was a totally real name. Roger Rabbit's brother, I don't know. And that he was the second officer of the infamous Ourang Medan. Second Officer Rabbit remembered the Medan coming to port in Shanghai on July 7, 1947, where he was recruited to work the vessel. The command of the vessel never requested Jerry's papers, which was a strange occurrence and led him to conclude that many, if not all of the crew, had been hired on in a similar fashion. The steamship was a former Chinese cargo/troop transporter, which made it ideal for carrying larger loads throughout the region. Before leaving port in Shanghai, 7,000 boxes of unknown material were loaded at night. On July 9th, the crew made their way 80 nautical miles south to the vicinity of Daishan Island, where they would take on yet another mysterious load of 8,000 boxes. So that's 15,000 boxes of stuff that they didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
Rabbit began to suspect that he and his shipmates were transporting contraband. The crew was to deliver their cargo to another ship off of Costa Rica, quite a ways away. A course was plotted to avoid major shipping routes, but 10 days into the voyage, the stokers that tended the boilers in the fire room fell ill. One stoker died immediately. His death was concluded to be a result of heat stroke. A few more days on the machine, crew fell into poor health as well, complaining of stomach cramping and pain. Jerry Rabbit grew concerned and decided to inspect records on board as to what their cargo might be. The inquisitive second officer discovered that the 15,000 boxes in cargo hold number 4 contained sulfuric acid and cyanide and 20 canisters of nitroglycerin. Coming to the fair conclusion that the volatile cargo below deck might be leaking and causing the crew to fall ill, Jerry implored the captain to make an emergency call. Upon being refused, Rabbit took 6 of his most sensible shipmates and absconded with an emergency boat from the starboard side of the Ourang Medan. Second Officer Jerry Rabbit was able to survive drifting in the middle of the ocean for 3 weeks with no provisions.
Sure.
Then he conveyed his traumatic experience to a random stranger who happened to find him in the middle of nowhere. And then he died a few days later.
Sure.
The accounting of these alleged events by those of the Star leaves many questions for more inquiring minds. I regret to admit that there are no satisfactory answers to be found. Only more questions can be found from this point on. First and most importantly, forget all dates, the substance of the SOS message, the general starting location of the Silver Star, and maybe even the Silver Star herself. That was the one that rescued them, or went to help. There are publications from the US, Dutch, Indonesia, Canada, and England reporting on the so-called, quote, death ship, unquote. In all articles written about this incident, the only thing that consistently lines up is the story of a boat that sends a frantic SOS, is then found with the crew mysteriously dead later, and then is destroyed. Those are the only consistencies.
Mm-hmm.
A bulleted list of bridging the variance in facts surrounding this event between all sources includes the years, which are 1939, 1940, 1947, and 1948. Mm-hmm. And I believe this one that I've been talking about was in
47.
47, yes.
Yeah.
But an interesting fact that about 1939, that this happened in 1939, the Silver Star wasn't even built then.
Yeah.
It hadn't even been built yet. That's crazy. The location of the star was cited as being near the Malacca Strait or 200 miles east of the Solomon Islands, which was about 4,000 miles away.
Uh-huh.
And no one can confirm which location it was.
Uh-huh.
The SOS message was written differently in some instances. Some claimed the crew was dead. Some used the word murdered.
Ooh.
There are other ways the ship was described as being destroyed. It was burned. It burned and then exploded. And it burned and exploded continuously. And it burned and exploded so hard that it lifted out of the water.
What were we just saying about, oh, well, I took a picture of a ghost, but I accidentally deleted it. Same thing, different font.
That's definitely it. One of the most concrete facts about this incident is that there is no actual proof that it ever happened beyond unsubstantiated witness testimony from a guy who died a few days later. Mm-hmm. The very ship, Ourang Medan, has no documentation that can confirm it ever existed in the first place. No shipping records, work orders, manifests, or even previous crew speaking on the record. Mm-hmm. Now remember, it was supposed to be like a contraband vessel, so... But wouldn't it have had a build record?
Yeah, you'd think that there would at least be documents of it, like leaving a shipyard or being constructed at a shipyard.
Mm-hmm. Or the parts being ordered for a ship.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. The Silver Star also has no logs detailing a failed rescue attempt of another vessel. There are some theories that have been posited to validate this curious case, such as pirates, but that was quickly dismissed due to the lack of injury among the crew. Large methane bubbles rising from the seabed, igniting when meeting heat from the boilers, which Brandon says is creative. But if true, that would mean the crew would have been immolated instead of dying of hypoxia and then being immolated/blown up later.
Yeah. Farts. Yeah.
Also, yes, farts. The CO2 produced by the boilers killed the crew. The ship is not a confined space. It was well vented. It was not the only coal-powered vessel on the water in those times. Mm-hmm. If this were possible, it would have happened many times by this point in history. But also, CO2 is not explosive. Mm-hmm. And some people claim ghosts or aliens. So, last little bit on this. A German professor named Theodor Serfsdorfer.
That's a fake name.
He was the first person to publish the names of the US ships that aided the Medan with no credited sources. But he did recommend that those inquiring to know more of the facts surrounding the ill-fated ship should read The Ship of the Dead in the South Sea by Otto Milke, which is a short booklet detailing specifics about the ship, its route, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
The next bit is simply delicious. Otto Milke was a member of the German Navy between 1939 and 1945, which technically makes him a Nazi, but that really isn't what's surprising about Otto. Mr. Milke was a writer of booklet novels of the fictional variety. A fiction writer was listed as a legitimate source by an educator who claimed he heavily researched this penny dreadful.
Oh.
While Otto can't take credit for fabricating the original story, he has certainly done his part as a writer. It would seem that we have this story thanks to a select few, some of whom will never likely receive due credit for such a compelling piece of fiction.
Damn.
Cheers.
The ghostliest of ghost ships is the one that doesn't exist at all.
So yeah, that's what I have to share. Thank you to Georgia and
Yeehaw.
Brandon who gave me all of these notes. There's a lot to learn.
Yeehaw.
Yeehaw, bitch.
The sea is a scary place.
It sure
even
do,
if
baby.
you're on top of it.
Yeah.
Hallucinating.
All right, homies. In 2 days.
2 days.
2 friggin' days.
We're currently having a panic attack.
We're going to be so calm and prepared, Georgia.
Okay.
I'm going to try really hard to be calm and prepared.
Okay. Me too.
That's all I can promise.
2 days, we're going to be at the Orpheum Theater in Champaign in a tent and crazy outfits and selling art and buttons and promoting our podcast.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks for listening, everyone. 2 more episodes till the end of the season.
If you've seen a ghost ship, please write to us and tell us about it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, bye. Woo!
Okay, bye!
YARRR!
Yeehaw.
Well, that concludes this week's broadcast. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you wish to stay in touch, reach out to us at broadcastfromthebelfry@gmail.com or stalk us on Instagram at broadcastfromthebelfry. Again, I hope you've enjoyed our little show. Please rate and review. And until next week, stay spooky.